For this lesson, we're going to learn how to find an angle measurement of a right triangle using the inverse functions of trig. So to set up to find the missing angle, it is the same as if you were to find a missing side. Always draw your diagram, put your angle measurement information inside the triangle, and then know your referenced angle, and then label all the sides, opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So to undo sine, cosine, and tangent, there are the inverse functions on your calculator. And the way you get access is you click second and sine. That will give you the inverse of sine. So the inverse functions, remember, in any mathematics is just undoing that operation, just like multiplication undoes division. So the inverse of sine, sine raised to the -1, undoes the sine function, as well as second cosine, second tangent. Now remember to make sure that your calculator is in degree mode. So if it is in radian mode, just go to mode and then highlight degree. It's the first one, and then click enter. Another way to set up or say the inverse of sine is using the arc sine x, which is red, the arc whose sine is x, or the arc whose cosine is x, or the arc whose tangent is x. I'll just be using the -1 exponent. Okay, so let's do what it said. You can write this diagram in your notes, and then make sure you're aware of the referenced angle. So our reference angle is angle A. So we know the opposite length, and we know our hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is always across from your right angle. So the trig function that uses opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we're going to set it up just like we did in the previous lesson. So the sine of some angle measurement is equal to 30/40. Now, we need to undo sine, so we use the inverse of sine. So we have the inverse of sine times x. So whatever we do to the left, whatever operation, we also have to do to the right side. So sine, the inverse of sine, undoes sine. So now we just have x is equal to the inverse of sine times 30/40. So on your calculator, you're going to use the second sine. So you can see here, you're just going to say second sine, and then I use the N/D button, and then I just plugged in 30/40, and then arrowed out and put my parenthesis and clicked enter. And so we get 48.59. The instructions would round to the nearest degree, so that rounds to 49 degrees. So this angle is about 49 degrees. Remember that all triangles equal 180 degrees, so if they ask for angle B, we could simply add 90 and 49 and subtract from 180 to get the angle measurement of B. Okay, let's try a second one. Our referenced angle is remaining the same. So from this point of view, I've been given the opposite and the adjacent side length. So opposite and adjacent, the trig function we'll use is tangent. So the tangent of some angle measurement is equal to 15/20. We need to undo tangent, so we're going to use the inverse of tangent. And whatever we do to the left, we also have to apply to the right. So this inverse undoes tangent, so we have x is equal to the inverse tangent times 15/20. So in your calculator, you're going to do second tangent. That gives you your inverse tangent function. Use your N/D, plug in 15/20, and then when we do that, we get 36.86 and so on. We're rounding to the nearest degree, so we're going to round up to 37. So this angle is 37 degrees. Our third example, our reference angle, again, is angle A. So from this point of view, I've been given my adjacent length and my hypotenuse length. So adjacent and hypotenuse deals with the cosine function. So the cosine of some angle measurement, excuse me, is equal to 9/11. We're going to undo cosine, so we're going to use the inverse of cosine. So now we have x isolated. So in your calculator, we're going to do second cosine times 9/11. And when we do, we get 35.096, which rounds to 35 degrees. Okay, again, remember anytime pause the video to get your information written in your notebook. So when you take your quick check, it'll be a piece of cake. Okay, let's do 3 more. Let's change colors. So in this example, our referenced angle gives us the opposite length and our hypotenuse. So opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So the sine of some angle is equal to opposite 15 over hypotenuse 24. So we're going to take the inverse of sine on both sides, and that leaves us with x isolated. And now in our calculator, we're going to click second sine 15 over 24, and that gives me about 38.68. And the instructions say round to the nearest degree, so that's going to be about 39 degrees. So this angle is about 39 degrees. Okay, the next one, our referenced angle, we don't know the opposite, but we know the adjacent and we know the hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse is going to be cosine. So the cosine of some angle is equal to 6/14. We are going to undo cosine by taking the inverse on both sides. We've isolated x. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but in all of these trig functions, the smaller number is always in the numerator. Okay, so we're going to do second cosine, my n over d feature, 6/14, and it gives me about 64.62. And rounding to the nearest degree, that gives me about 65 degrees. So that's this angle right there. Okay, and our last one. Here's our reference angle. We know the opposite. We don't know the hypotenuse, but we do know the adjacent. So opposite over adjacent is tangent. So the tangent of some angle measurement is equal to 16/46. We're going to undo, so we're going to do the inverse of tangent on both sides. X is isolated. So second tangent n over d, 16/46, about 19.17, which rounds to about 19 degrees. So this angle is about 19 degrees.